moving on, we have our next Fireside chat, and it's titled Lead Gen Recipes, a strategic step towards effective conversion. This will dive into the strategies, tools, and techniques that are redefining lead generation today, from personalized approaches to leveraging data-driven insights. Our speakers will share recipes for creating engagement that will drive results. So please help me welcome to the stage our moderator, Harshal Patil, the CEO and founder of BTB Venture, and our guest speakers, Navin Jaitley, the CEO of Navin Jaitley Coaching Limited, and Masroor Hook, partner at CAAZ Consulting. Please give them a big round of applause as they make their way up to stage.
Good morning, everyone. So I think maybe we'll just start off with a pretty quick introduction of ours before we start the panel. So my name is Harshal. I'm the founder of BTB Venture Group. We are a Forbes-listed company based in India and the US. And we are closely working with mostly the B2B companies to elevate their overall customer acquisition since 2016.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Navin Jaitley. I'm the founder and CEO of Navin Jaitley Coaching Limited. And what we do is we help teams and companies grow their business. So we do business growth coaching and consulting and training. And the way we do this is that we help really three different areas. We help with developing their communication so that they are able to communicate better internally, but also when they are customer facing, the teams, with their business development, because you cannot grow a business unless you know how to sell. And finally, with their high performance mindset, because 80% of success comes from mindset. So we coach and train teams and leaders on how to foster that, ultimately helping them to grow their businesses, scale their businesses, and take on more market share.
And my name is Masroor. I'm a real estate investor by nature, and now I'm mastering business and strategy. My coaching focuses on leaders to build their authenticity, build their businesses without losing their soul. And then on the business strategy side, I like to kind of develop strategies on sustainability where businesses can thrive, again, without losing their souls. And I think it makes sense for us three to be on a panel together because we all have different areas of expertise. I'm on more the strategy side. Navin here is more on the coaching and training side, and Harshal actually does the thing. And so it's actually a wonderful context as far as when we were discussing earlier all the different conversion and lead gen recipes, and we're so eager to get started on our concepts here.
Great. So I think appreciate the introduction, guys. So I think as the soul of this topic is around sales conversions and lead generation. I think chasing conversion without a purpose or chasing revenue generation without a purpose is actually walking on a treadmill where you are walking at the same speed at the same place but you're not moving. So I think purpose plays a very critical role for the sales conversion. So from that perspective, my question to you, Navin, is what should companies or organizations do in order to generate more qualified leads from a purpose standpoint, actually, if you want to build a purpose-driven organization?
Yeah, so first of all, I know it sounds obvious, but you've got to prioritize it. It's actually quite surprising how many businesses do not prioritize lead generation, conversions, which ultimately is going to give them what they need, the sales, to drive the organization forward. And whatever your organization, whatever its purpose is, it's only going to be able to execute it if you've got customers. So you've got to prioritize lead generation. But what I always say as well is organizations, and we work with organizations from very small ones to large ones, and it's actually quite surprising how they don't define what their customer avatar is, right? Because lead generation, you could go out and get a bunch of leads, but they could be with the wrong people. So I'll give you an example. Even within my business, there are entrepreneur programs we have, and there are programs for larger companies. So we have to have different lead generation strategies depending who we're speaking to, because the needs of an individual entrepreneur are going to be slightly different to the needs of a team within an organization. So one of the things to do, get right as well, is get very, very, very clear on what's your avatar. When you're getting a lead generation strategy together, you've got to be thinking about what are they thinking about. You've got to get very empathetic and be in their world. What's their problems? What's their challenges? Where are they hanging out? Right, whether it's metaphorically or actually physically, where are they hanging out so you can actually get in touch with them, right? So you've got to define that, and that's got to then link to your purpose of your business, because then that's got to link to the type of people you want to generate as leads. So I think that prioritizing it, actually getting very, very clear who your avatar is, and then something I'll speak about a little bit later in this panel is actually taking out the investment in training and developing people on how to do that. So I'd say there's sort of 3 areas, and you link it to your purpose, your DNA of your organization, and that should bring in not just more leads, because anybody can get leads, it's bringing the right type of leads, which I'll explain a little bit later, will actually help with conversion later on.
And to kind of add to that too, once you know your customer avatar, once you know your buyer persona, then you understand the value exchange, and it makes it very easy to give them what they want or what they're looking for, and making sure that that conversion is actually aligned with the solution that they're looking for. A lot of people just miss that. They're looking to build their business and not necessarily build the experience for their customer.
Absolutely. And in order to, what Naveen said, so I think you can't scale everything, right? You have to be, pretty cautious of what you want to scale in future. So how do we really analyze whether it's really worth to scale it up actually?
And that was the question that I was asking. Number one, are you scaling something worth scaling? Because that makes a difference. If you're going to scale some trash, then it's just digital waste that you're putting out in the world anyway, and it's kind of irrelevant, and your business is going to tank shortly thereafter regardless.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Naveen, mainly, one of the critical challenges a lot of the companies have seen is actually, not lead generation in a lot of the cases, but it's sales conversion. Because majority of them fail to convert the leads that they have been generated. And it could be, maybe because of the budget or maybe authorities or the need pointers or connections. But how do we tackle that, the issue of the conversion?
Yeah, because ultimately the conversion is what counts. I can give you all the leads in the world, even the right leads, but if they don't want to work with you, then effectively it's a waste of time and effort to a certain degree. So again, there's a few things. One is what I spoke about 2 minutes ago, which is in order to convert right. In fact, let me just quickly ask the audience a quick question, right? Who believes that conversion is all about what happens at the end of a sales process? Who believes that that's where conversion is, where the magic happens? Okay, and who believes that conversion happens right throughout the sales process from the beginning? Okay, correct. That's right. See, a lot of the time with conversion, people think it's a magic thing that happens at the end, a silver-tongued statement, a final piece of negotiation. The truth is, the conversion happens from the first moment the potential customer has an interaction with your organization or your individuals within the organization. Okay, and that starts with what I said a couple of minutes ago. Get your avatar right, because that's going to help convert later. If you are selling Rolls Royces to somebody making $100 a month, it doesn't matter how good of a salesperson you are, what you say, what you do, they're just not your target customer, right? So it sounds obvious, but people get that wrong. The second thing is always, there's movies which says always be closing. I always say always be converting. From the point of view, you need to think with the end in mind. So you have to have lots of touch points with a client. They actually say, statistics say that it takes at least 7 touch points on average, depends on what you're selling, depends on the industry. It takes at least 7 touch points, 7 interactions to convince somebody to want to work with you. So in order to convert, you need to make sure that every single one of those touch points are powerful. Working with an organization at the moment, they're a consulting firm. They are looking to bring in new business. We were looking at what their initial messaging was about. And when we looked at it, it was all about them. We are the 5th largest consulting firm in this sector. We have X% of clients. We do this, we do that. That's, for a start, not a very powerful first touch point. We looked at the consequent touch points. It was just very much asking the client for something. They weren't giving value. When we changed it so that they were giving value and putting themselves in the client's world and reaching out to them, that was helping with their conversion later on. So when it came to converting should be effortless. It shouldn't be this big resistance that happens at the end. It should be a natural process. And the reason why it becomes very tough to convert and people drop their prices and do all sorts of things is because the entire process was not optimal. So going back to to summarize the question, in order to convert, you need to get your avatar right and you have to get that entire process right. And then the third thing I would say is being an organization that's training and coaching, I see the power of it, right? Come and actually hear my keynote at 1:30 in the CXO room. I'm going to explain my own journey and how that happened. Training and coaching, you've got to invest. If you've got teams, even yourselves, invest in training and coaching to learn how to convert, learn how to sell, learn how to influence, because that's going to make the return on investment will be huge.
You know, and going back to having the right lead gen and going to the conversion, and if you have a product or a service that is irresistible, it's almost inevitable for those conversions to happen, that's how you know that it's a product worth scaling, right? And so, Harshal, you're doing the sales aspect of things. What's it like selling something that you know is not going to work? What's it like selling a product that is of minimal value or that you know that there's some holes and available value to be added there?
I think, assessment is pretty important in all those roles, actually. I mean, the moment when you want to build a sales team, I think it's pretty important to also have, sales roadmap ready, even before you launch the product or service, actually. And from that perspective, usually we do the feasibility assessment. We don't directly go ahead and, recommend to build a sales team. It's pretty important to really analyze at the ground level whether its product or service really worth it. And then, as I said, I think analyzing the ideal customer profile. Analyzing the ideal customer profile is pretty crucial in this particular case, actually. But roughly, we did one survey, in the last month. And that survey was exactly where the scalability challenge lies, actually. So we call this theory as an orbit theory. So we took the survey with different company sizes. So one was from employee size of 1 to 10 people. The second one was from 10 to 50 people. And third one was with 50 to 200 people. The companies who really struggled to scale were from 50 to 200. Because there was a pretty crucial challenge that occurred in the journey, and that was a leaky bucket challenge. So once you board the customers, they will not retain with you. They will not stay with you for longer. And that's when that leaky bucket challenge also comes into play. And for that, I think one of the key mechanisms or methodologies that usually companies needs to adapt is unified framework of custops and RevOps both combined together. Currently, a lot of the companies, they only have the revenue operations as a function where, marketing team works and sales team works. Either they are working together or they are working in silos. But customer operations team or the project delivery team, usually they work in as a totally different department. So I think the moment when we will fix that particular gap, then, eventually the sales cycle or the scalability challenge also, will get overcome eventually in the future. And it's actually like a plumbing, right? I mean, you will not notice the leak unless you figure it out. So from that perspective, I think very few companies have been, adapting this particular framework of, unified RevOps and custops together in a way.
Actually, on that, Harshal, so one of the things I'm a big believer in is not always chopping and changing. However, there is times when things need to be redesigned, right? When is the right time for a company? When is the right time to go, actually, let's redesign this sales process? Let's do a wholesale change.
Absolutely. So I think, of course, the key element when it comes to sales is, of course, the KPIs of sales conversions. The day when your customer acquisition costs are higher and your, revenue, total number of, deals that you have closed are slightly on a lower side, I think that is the day when you really start to introspect immediately. And for that, some of the management methodologies that companies have been adopting is, daily stand-ups and weekly meetings, which is a common thing that everybody do. But outcome-based selling is something that is also very crucial. If companies are not adopting the outcome-based selling, then, very high chances that, sales closure rate goes to a toss in that particular case. And second is, I think agility in the sales methodology is equally required. I mean, we really need to have a right balance between, the new advanced AI and then, of course, the tools that we're using, plus the human touch, actually. So both the aspects plays a pretty crucial role in that. Also, it is very crucial that, companies don't seek the internal cross-functional advice when it comes to closure. This is mainly for the B2B tech companies, SaaS companies, or even consulting firms. So internally, I think the people who are actually executing the projects should also be there on the sales calls in order to give the relevant use cases so that, it really adds up the value, because sales call should not be led only by the founders or the salespeople. The actual execution team, someone should be there on those calls as well. So I think seeking the cross-functional help is also equally important. And the last, I think BD should not be business development, it should be brand development. And at all layers, as you mentioned in the beginning, right from, a website, marketing materials, to the emails, to the calls, everything, I think we need to have the unified messaging. So if it's not there, then also it's a time to think and, redesign the sales. But would love to ask one more question to you. I mentioned the point of, striking the right balance between the technology and the human touch. What are your thoughts on that particular point?
Well, actually, a few parts of it. So you mentioned brand, you mentioned outcome-based approach, and then you mentioned the AI and automation. So the brand, 100%. Authenticity is your ideal goal, and being able to understand what your brand's authenticity is going to be one of the most powerful strong suits that you have moving forward in 2025. With outcome-based metrics, when we're thinking about conversion, we're thinking about the actual sales process and the closing of each step in the customer journey. But what if we started addressing a couple of the different metrics? What if we understand what metric it is when we get our clients into a transformational point, when we get them to actual point A to point B and measure point B as far as the success point and not just the conversion? I think our pathway and our sales, our journey, our marketing, every part of that journey ends up being a little bit different, because we understand that the transformation is what we're after, not necessarily the conversion. Again, it goes back to building a product or a service that the conversion is inevitable is kind of the point. And then with AI and automation, to be honest, we've had an entire conference filled with AI and automation. I think moving forward, 2025, AI and automation is actually the easy part. That part's natural. You can chat GPT the whole thing if you wanted to. I think the harder part is more of the demographics and the psychographics and understanding the human touch and understanding the person-to-person business relationship. That is kind of losing its way. But when you get into the higher and upper echelons and getting into leadership management, it is a people business as opposed to anything else. The AI and automations are almost easier to implement at that point moving forward.
Absolutely. I have a question in alignment with this, actually, because it's about the human touch. One thing that you mentioned was also crucially important was about the mindset of the business development people, actually. So if you could throw a little bit light on that particular portion.
Yeah, 100%. Just before I say that, I loved what you said there. It shouldn't be business development, it should be brand development. Because I think increasingly so in organizations, even in a big organization, people's personal brand is playing a big part in that, as well as the overall brand of the organization. So I really liked that wording, actually. I'm gonna use that. So in terms of, the mindset is everything, right? So, for example, one of the reasons why people price drop, typically when it comes to negotiation, is because they don't know the value of their product or service enough. Because when you're steeped in the value, you will not drop your prices. That's just an example of where mindset can come into it. And that can also affect your conversion ratios, because if you don't believe in your product and service, you don't understand the value that it's giving the organization that you're working with, then you're always going to find it a challenge to convert, because there is going to be somebody else coming in doing something for cheaper or slightly different. And because you haven't steeped yourself in that value, you're not going to be able to get the clients over the line. So that's one thing. The other thing with mindset is, I always say, some people find sales a dirty word. They don't like the word sales and selling, especially the UK where I'm from, right? People don't like that word. One of the things I always say is, let's actually change. Let's actually think, what really is sales? Because I think people have been watching some movies like Wolf of Wall Street and think it's like, you know, guy in a slick suit coming along and just trying to get somebody over the line. But when you really think what sales is about, this comes from the mindset, sales is serving. Because if you think about it, you've got a problem or challenge, whether it's an individual level or a company. I have something that can solve that problem or challenge. Once we've had a discussion, I've identified that. And I want to help you. I want to serve you. So the reason I bring that up is when people throughout the organization, non-salespeople and salespeople, actually start seeing themselves as service professionals, right? It takes the dirty word out of sales, it takes the stigma out of it, and it helps for them to go out and want to generate more leads and want to make more conversions, because they see that they're doing something for good. So for me, mindset is the crux of everything, and it needs to be worked on. People need to be looking at even their own roles as service professionals, part of a bigger mission, which goes back to the mission and why you're doing things. When everybody's aligned to that, they will want to go out and they'll want to have conversations with clients, and they'll want to bring in business, not just for the bottom line, but because they actually believe they're serving and helping.
And I think one of the things that get overlooked, and I'll go back to a little bit of the real estate perspective. My mentor always told me real estate has nothing to do with real estate. It is psychology and emotions. And so that's kind of the foundation and fundamentals of brand and business strategy as well. It's psychology and emotions. What are the psychology and emotions of our clients? What are they looking for? What are their pain points that they're feeling? And what are the next step of values that they're required to get in order to get them to the next step? And I think we miss a lot of that when we're talking about just lead gen and conversion. You know, if we don't put in the psychology and emotions of our ideal buyer's market and kind of the mindset of where we are and how we need to mentor them and serve them in order to get them to the next level is kind of where we need to start thinking of.
Excellent. So I think one thing that I noticed, apart from revenue operations and then, customer operations, custops actually, I tried to also pull out some of the, notes for this particular panel. I think we have only a few minutes left, but I noticed I pulled out 10 surveys of some of the, great companies that they did actually. So I just want to, share those 10 surveys so that maybe even a single glitch here could, lead to a sales disaster. So the first one is actually, this is by Brevet Group. So they mentioned that 80% of the sales require 5 follow-ups, but 44% of the salespeople give up after third follow-up actually. The second one is by Inside Sales, where they said that if you reply to a lead within 5 minutes, makes you 9x more likely to convert them in future. So this is by Inside Sales. Salesforce, which is a...
There was a company that their sales team every day had to finish their queue before they went to the new set of people. But literally that one tweak of understand and go after the warmest, freshest leads first, they doubled their sales overnight just by understanding what that queue looked like and how to attribute to that queue.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even Salesforce mentioned the same thing. I mean, sales reps spend only 33% of their time actually actively selling. They spend rest of their time only in managing CRMs and replying to the leads kind of thing. Gartner says that average B2B buying decision involves actually 5 to 6 decision makers minimum. It's not the one person. McKinsey said that email is 40 times more effective than the cold calling, Facebook, Twitter, all combined. Dale Carney said that salespeople who ask for referrals earn 4x more than what usually others don't actually. So I think asking the referrals is also one of the pretty crucial. PwC says that 86% of the buyers are willing to pay more for great customer experience, and not to the actual solution that they're selling.
And we talk about customer experience, but if you think about it, what are people buying from you? Do you think that they're buying that product or service? They're really not. It's 2025. You're a commodity. It's almost irrelevant. Anybody else can do what you do for the most part, except for Sean. You got one-on-one. You got one-on-one. But everybody else can do what you can do. What they're buying from you is your experience, the experience that you provide. That's what they're actually, that's the value exchange. And we can't forget that, because especially in the world of AI and all these other businesses and everybody in this room and in this place that are all trying to build their businesses, the experience is what people are actually after.
Conclusion comments?
Yeah, I think there's a few things there. The stats section really interesting. A lot of them I've heard before. And look, some of the things like people don't follow up. There's two reasons why they don't follow up. Number one, it's a mindset thing. Because they're like, oh, will I look pushy? Oh, somebody's already said no once, or they haven't come back to me, let's leave it, right? There's no persistency comes from when you really believe in what you're selling, right? I always say that, bit of a dark analogy, but if somebody I knew had a serious disease like cancer, and I had a pill that I knew if they took it, they'd cure themselves, and I said, hey, I've got this cure for you, and they went, no, it's okay, I don't want it. Would I just give up? No, I'd be like, no, you need to have this. I'd follow up persistently because I so believe and I want to help that person. But because most people in organizations are not that aligned to what they're selling, they give up, they don't follow up. And the second thing is, there is obviously skill involved. There are technical skills of how to follow up without looking pushy. You're not just going to keep every 5 minutes sending an email going, have you read my proposal yet? Yeah, you're going to come across that annoying guy, right? There's other things you can do. So a lot of the reason why I think some of these stats exist is because people don't have the technical know-how of what to do and say, and then they're not aligned from a mindset perspective or a confidence perspective or inner game perspective, and that's why these stats end up happening. So that's why we do what we do, because we want to coach and train them from a mindset and skill set point of view to help them get there over the line.
And confidence comes from competence, right? Being able to know that, listen, I have this pill. I know it works. I'm much more tempted to follow up with you because I know it's competent. I have a competent solution for you. It's way easier for me to be able to get that conversion just because I know it works.
And just to sort of summarize as well, I think obviously the mindset's really important, which is where I think coaching can really help. The training around skill set's really important, but also a culture. Lead generation, the topic of this panel was lead generation and conversion, right? Which comes from effectively what we call a business development or sales culture. And that has to be embedded into an organization. And I always go back to, I probably use this analogy on the other panels, and I'm going to use it again later, but I love it. When JFK asked somebody at NASA, what is it you do? And they said, I'm helping putting somebody on the moon. And that guy ended up being a cleaner. The point is they were so embedded in the culture and the mission of what they were trying to achieve that everyone was aligned. And I think culture is something that you want to create in your organization so that everybody sees themselves as a business development professional, and that comes from taking the dirty word out of business development and sales and seeing it's a good force because they have to be aligned to it. So I think culture is very important.
Yeah, and if you imagine the parts of your business, whether you're a solopreneur or you have a 100-person team, especially if you have a 100% team, you're not touching every aspect of the customer journey. So how do you control lead gen and conversion at that point if you're not a part of that? And being at the top of that, you have to identify and implement and interact and integrate culture in order to make sure that each customer touch point within your organization is a conversion opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think just a conclusion comment, I think it is also essential to really analyze that what one platform really suits you in order to scale your sales actually. Not all the platforms might fit you for your business propositions. For example, ChatGPT got viral not because of Instagram, not because of Facebook. It was because of the word of mouth that IT people did amongst themselves. They use the advanced channels like Reddit in order to, comment on a lot of the places on how, bots can solve their problems. So I think we'll open it up for the questions now.
Yep.
Any questions, anyone?
Well, I don't necessarily have a great question other than a little edification for you all. And the topic, so ultimately, and I'll add something that I think Mustafa had talked about earlier, as a leader and in sales, and yes, I'm in the sales world, the revenue generation side, if you will. If we're not a good listener to what the lead person or whomever that is saying or asking or what they're doing, and frankly, even asking them, even before I get to the point of presenting what I do, is really, why are you here talking to me? Why are you interested in what I do before I present anything? So when you're talking about the conversion scenarios, is ultimately, if I can address what they said they need, and it takes a little while to get through the process to revenue, I can always come back to, you said you needed this and that I can provide that. If we're not doing that now, what else is there that I haven't addressed as far as this process that might not have come up? But again, I wanted to just sort of edify what you guys had sort of brought that up and add that to it, but that's great stuff.
And I think active listening is, even after kind of it's almost step 2, right? So step 1, if your brand and personal brand and all of that is actually showcased well enough, then people are already sold by the time they're talking to you. When they're talking to you, all you have to do is ask them questions to figure out where they're at, because they already know what you do. They're here because of you, right? Why are they here? And so now you have to learn about them. And so that's when the active listening comes into place. But really, the conversion has already happened, 2 hours ago or 5 days ago or a week ago. Now we're just having the conversion after the fact. But the conversion happened. And so the active listening part is just making sure that the fulfillment of that customer experience is really, really on point.
Just one last, I see we're out of time, but one last thing just to add to that. Completely agree with that. And there's a saying which says, telling isn't selling, right? If you're just telling and talking at someone, you're not selling to them. Asking questions and listening, that's when you really sell. So, yeah, very good point from the gentleman there.
Cool.
Any more questions? Oh, we have a few. I'm going to run around.
I figured people were wanting to sell their stuff.
All right. So I think for sales, it's one of the jobs where you need people who have the mindset to sell. You can teach any job to anybody, but sales is something which comes from the mindset. So when you all hire people, let's say it's an associate or maybe somebody on an executive level, so what are your checklist in terms of hiring the right people for sales?
It's actually kind of funny. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that some of the best salespeople are the ones that are the most empathetic. And they're not built or trained to be salespeople. They're just built to be listeners or people that care. And so it's very. I know it's contrarian. I think some salespeople, yes, they're hunters. They are sharks. They go after it. I think in a B2B world, yeah, 100% almost necessary. And then in a B2C world, yeah, empathy is almost a requirement. But yeah, I think you're better suited to understand, to answer the question of the checklist.
Yes. So one thing that we are, primarily looking at while hiring a salesperson is the compatibility with our vision, actually. And we don't do that with the help of, say, aptitude tests or maybe a presentation demos. Usually we just go out, spend time, and then we try to analyze whether this person really fits in or compatible with what we are trying to sell. And I think if there is a synergy between what we are selling and whether that particular person really compatible with it, then I think that makes a good equation as well.
And then how do you train or coach somebody into being a salesperson?
Yeah, so just on that, what your point is there. First of all, I think that people can be, actually, you're not born to be a salesperson. I really don't believe that. I think you can generate those qualities to become one. And like what you said, a lot of it is about empathy. The other thing, you can do psychometric tests. There are tests we use called DISC. The reason is to see the personality type. It's like what you said. If you want somebody who's got a very hunter role, right, that's a different type of personality. Maybe someone who's a bit more clinical than, say, someone we call who's a farmer, who wants to nurture something, right? And so that's one thing. In terms of coaching and training people, yeah, that's where you want to... A lot of the time why people don't want to sell is because of a lack of belief. I really do believe that. Because it goes back to my example before. If you really believe in yourself and believe in a product or service you're selling, you're going to want to tell people not to convert something and get something over the line just because you're so passionate about it, right? You see a great movie, you go around telling everyone about it because you just love the movie, right? That's what you can do through coaching and training. Because when you give people the skill set and the mindset, they're going to want to go out naturally and go and have conversations. That's really what selling is. It's not. It starts with having conversations. And going back to the gentleman's point there, really, you should be trying to do more listening than speaking in that conversation. But once you do that, you'll see the magic happen.
And real quick, one of the tools in my toolbox I use is the human design. And one of the ways that I use it is in my strategy of my human design, I'm a respond and inform kind of person. And so I can't do cold calling. It's not going to work for me. But if the calls come to me or if the people come to me, I can respond and inform. And so that's my sales strategy or strong point, essentially. So it's also identifying who our authentic human design and what our flow state is like. So that way we actually understand and we're not forcing the conversation, or we're not forcing the skill set that we're not necessarily built for.
Hi there. This is really a really great panel. So thank you so much. I love human design, by the way. I think a common theme is like a lot of people undersell themselves, or like maybe from the same insecurities within themselves, oversell themselves, like when they're talking to people like you guys have just said. But what really resonated was getting the client avatar right for your different, like kind of whatever your offerings are, your services are. And I think that comes from the same place as well, the insecurity. People often then kind of aim lower than what they're really offering. I wondered if you had any tips on how to, because I find that the more specific you are on your client avatar, the easier it is for you to talk to them. I just wondered what tips you might give us and the audience around how to make that more specific and how to overcome some of the blocks about who you're really talking to. That
Yeah,
makes sense?
100%. So I think part of that is if you feel kind of like an imposter syndrome type scenario, that means it's still about you. That means you didn't dive into your customer as much as you should. And that means you don't care about them as much as you should. Because if you did, then you will find ways to bring them value. And then understanding the customer value, you should really have a buyer's persona for every product. And so I have a set of products or services for every company, and then I have separate buyer's personas for each product for that buyer. And so that way we can navigate that conversation very acutely and surgically. And so that way I know that, if it's a seminar that I need to sell for a specific type of coaching client, then that conversation is very acute than the boot camp or the retreat for that same specific type of client. And so there's going to be an overarching set of buyer personas, but then there's going to be a surgical and acute set of buyer personas for each product and service.
Yeah. Just an extension with that, it's really important is to get it very, get yourself in their shoes. So people would have heard the drink Red Bull, right? Yeah. Then another brand came along called Monster, right? Now, Monster didn't actually sell themselves as an energy drink. What they did is they thought of the ideal client, right? For them, it was typically young people, typically young guys who were skateboarders, right? So all their branding, all their messaging, everything was around that young teenage guy, 16, 17 years old, who probably who's a skateboarder, right? And therefore, it appealed to them. Yeah. So in terms of a tip, is get down, spend a strategy session if you have to, and go, if ideally the next person that walked through the room was my ideal client, I'm not saying you ignore everyone else, but your ideal client, what would they be? What would their age demographic be? Would they be male, female? What kind of business would they be part of? The main thing, what would their problem or challenge be that we could solve, right? Because that's very, very important. And when you nail that down and you write it down, we go through this. I mean, I could spend 20 minutes talking about this, but this is what we go through with our clients. We effectively have a way of them getting very, very clear as to who that ideal client is. And then all their marketing, selling, everything around that is aimed towards that, which brings it back to the right leads, which helps with conversions later.
And just to add to both of their pointers, I think adapting tech stacks in this particular thing is also plays a crucial role in order to analyze the need of the potential prospects. For example, let's say if you are a tech company and your criteria clearly have that you don't want to sell it to the low-cost countries, you don't want to sell it to the countries where the outsourcing percentage is high. Let's say if you just want to stick to one particular decision maker, and then if you just want to reach out to certain set of companies where the technology need is matching up, then I think it makes sense to reach out to only those kind of companies. So adapting a tech stack in order to analyze the need pointer is equally crucial rather than a spray and pray to the wider audience and figuring out that who will be a potential buyer for us actually.
If you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you guys for this dynamic panel. I just have a quick one. So for the B2B lead generation in a new territory, let's say we're expanding into a new territory. We've been doing the same service in a country, and then we're expanding into a place where we don't know anyone, no references there, no network. What is your tip for that?
Okay, sure. Yeah. Okay, it's good because we do a lot of work around this actually. So again, you're still doing the same things. You're working at your buying persona, who you're targeting, everything like that. But you can also do things like you can work with partners on the ground. So use partnerships, right? Leverage partnerships, other organizations in that country, okay? Anyone that you have in your network. But then you have to also get out and make people know you exist, right? And that does take a little bit of maybe spend on marketing, salespeople to go out and do things like cold calling or cold messaging or cold LinkedIn. You have to make a bit of noise. That's just, it's a bit common sense, but it's just something that has to be done. So I would say have a combination of using partners and leverage, and then just going out and actually start targeting the right people again, but going and taking active business development activity to make people aware of you. And realize it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Somebody hasn't heard of you, you come along, you contact them, they might not be ready yet. But if you keep providing them value, right, maybe 6 months later they'll be ready to work with you.
I think cultural tonality is also crucial important on all the platforms that you might be using. I think the strong product launch is equally important in that particular region. But I think the first campaign that we can always focus upon, as he rightly mentioned, is the ecosystem-based campaign, where we can figure out the second connections. As in, let's say if you're connected to 10 people, there could be 20 people connected to them, and leveraging that particular reference, reaching out to those other stakeholders. So reaching out through personal connections is one, and reaching out through a company connections, as in, let's say if you already worked with, let's say, 1 or 2 companies, there could be people who might have left that particular company and joined something else. So with connect-based lines, I think we can get quick attentions to get, quick funnel building in that particular region, actually.
And just a quick hit, I think organizational brand delivers through a personal brand. So regardless of how big the organization is, the personal brand and how your salespeople show up in networking event or at these seminars, that makes a huge difference, right? And so when you're going through strategic partnerships, when you're handshaking and kissing babies, those personal brand elements make a huge difference, and that's what resonates when you're not in the room.
I think we are done.
I think we're good. Overtime? Cool. No one else wants to build their business, right?
This.